trial like the rest of the world yesterday as the former Minneapolis police officer was found guilty for his role in the death of George Floyd last May. While many players and coaches like Kyrie Irving and Stan Van Gundy used their platform yesterday to applaud the verdict and push for further actions against social injustice in our country, LeBron James had one simple tweet. It started trending online, writing only accountability. Fox Sports NBA analyst Chris Broussard is joining us now. Chris, what was your reaction to the verdict?
Well, obviously, I was pleased that they came to what I believe was clearly the obvious verdict, and the fact that we weren't certain, the fact that we were wondering, and there was a lot of consternation over whether or not this was going to be the verdict, I think shows that we're not where we need to be as a society. But I was glad that they found him guilty of murder, which is exactly what it was, and we all saw it on TV. I didn't celebrate because the fact is a man who should be alive is dead now for no legitimate reason. George Floyd should be walking the streets. He should be alive now, and because of the racism of a police officer, a former police officer, he's dead. So the hope, and I think this is what, like with LeBron posting accountability and a lot of people, all of us in the black community, the hope is that this will serve as a deterrent to other police officers that maybe would have done something similar to this or would have, thought that they could get away with things like this. And not just a deterrent to individuals, but really, hopefully, this will spark systemic change in law enforcement. Because the way Derek Chauvin was looking when he had his knee on George Floyd's neck, he looked like he knew he was going to get away with it. Like he could do this and nobody was going to hold him accountable. And so hopefully this leads to some change and that type of thinking ends. I also believe that the cops that watched Chauvin do this, they need to be held accountable, and we'll see if that ends up happening. But they violated the law enforcement oath of honor that they all took. They betrayed it because they are supposed to hold not only themselves accountable for upholding, justice, but they're supposed to hold their fellow officers to the same standard. And they didn't do that. So they need to be held accountable as well. I'd like to address, some things I'm hearing, from people that, whether they disagree with the verdict or whatever, but they're talking about, well, what about all the crime, blacks killing blacks in Chicago and other places throughout the country? And look, I don't know one African-American who isn't concerned about the homicide rate in the black community. You can go into any black church or mosque on a Sunday, on a weekend, and hear preachers talking about what we need to do within our own community to improve our quality of life. So the notion that blacks aren't concerned with what's going on within our own community is just blatantly false. And people need to stop throwing it out because these are two separate issues, two completely separate issues. And as bad as it is for citizens to kill other citizens, and that's horrible, it is far worse for a policeman who is paid to protect and serve American citizens to be killing unarmed citizens. And I'm tired of hearing that excuse from people that want to, disagree with this verdict or just draw attention away from, police brutality, because they're two separate issues. And one is far worse because they're paid to protect and serve. And then finally, I think I hear from some, well, this wasn't race-based. And I just say, look, to some whites, I hate to say it that way, but their burden of proof for them when it comes to racism, they have a burden of proof that is way beyond reasonable doubt. I mean, they would have had to hear Derek Chauvin look in the camera and say, I'm doing this because he's black, for them to believe it was race-based. And you can go back to slavery and Jim Crow and see the same thing. So many whites saying, well, there's no racism. There's no racism here. And so let's just start calling things like they are, because that's the first step to really making real change.
I agree with everything that you said, Chris. This is really not even a debate here. For me, I believe there are two separate issues, and we can do both things. We can get systemic racism, we can do something with police reform, and we can also do something to address the killing in the black community. Those are two separate issues that can both be addressed. I, like you, did not celebrate. Because I felt that it's kind of like watching the OJ. And I know Chris, you're old enough to remember, and I know you were sitting around like 85, probably 90 other million Americans sitting around watching, waiting for that verdict to come. But like you said, this was different. For me, I'm like, the jury saw what we saw. A man kneeled on another man's neck in a prone position for 10 minutes. And all the top pathologists in the world, pulmonologists, said he was dead for 3-4 minutes, and he still was on his neck. And even after the fellow officer said, we should turn him on the side, no, we're going to keep him right here. Even as the EMT arrived, he was still on the man's neck. So I'm like, I can't applaud you for doing the right thing. It's like someone said, I went to the bar last night, had me a couple of drinks, and I called me an Uber. That's what you should have done. That's what the jury should have done. But the mere fact that we needed to applaud, and some needed to applaud the jury doing the right thing, this is absurd. Chris, you mentioned reasonable doubt. For some, it needs to be all doubt. Come on, man. You know what this was. Well, what if he was threatened? He felt threat from the crowd. The man had his hands in his pocket. If you've ever been in a fight, you feel threatened, you do not keep your hands in your pocket. Is this an anomaly, Chris? Is this an anomaly? Is this a one-off? Because Walter Scott didn't happen. Sandra Bland, Alton Sterling, Eric Gardner, Tamir Rice, nothing happened. Philea Castile, nothing happened. So is this a one-time, or is this the start of a greater change in which the system will be taken apart, police will be held accountable, qualified immunity be done away with, and we expect wholesale changes from top to bottom? Is this the change? Was George Floyd having to give his life, sacrifice his life for the greater cause? For me, when I look at it, George Floyd's family, we can't give him back to you. Our uncle is gone, a brother is gone, and we can't bring that back. But maybe a little relief from knowing the man that was responsible for taking George Floyd's life got what he justly deserved, which is guilty, guilty, guilty. And he will pay, because a lot of people, Eric Gardner family didn't get that. Alton Sterling's family didn't get that. Walter Scott's family didn't get that. They got some level of accountability, and hopefully it makes it a little easier. Doesn't erase it, doesn't take it away. But I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure, Chris, that this is going to bring about the change that we need. And Lord knows we need change.
So I would like to thank both of you for what you just said and everything you've said when it comes to race relations here on Undisputed. I've learned a lot from both of you.